An Abbreviated Timeline. Last Year of the First Era by Jaspis Ignatius. It has been said that citizens of the Empire who make the same mistakes as their forebears deserve to suffer the same fate. And while this may be true, it's hard to deny that the Empire's history is so long and our forebears have made so many mistakes. It's sometimes hard to keep track. This work is meant to serve as a concise compilation of the Empire's most recent events in this, our current age, what we refer to as the Third Era. It is a period of time that has yet comprised less than 500 years, but it should at least serve as a starting point for those who wish to study our Empire's vast and varied history, and maybe, just maybe, prevent the repeat of a previous disaster. Yeah, that would suck. Oh crap, we did the Oblivion Crisis again. It is also worth noting that when viewed in such a sufficient structure, one truly gets a sense of how often our great empire has changed leadership. Indeed, it can be argued that much of the Empire's history in these past 5 centuries is the changing rule of the very Empire itself. The first century of the Third Era. Third Era, Year 0. I'm just going to read these as what years they are instead of Third Era. So, Year 0. Beginning of the Third Era, when all province and Tamriel are unified. Year 38. The death of Emperor Tiber Septim and the crowning of Emperor Pelagius. Year 41. Assassination of Emperor Pelagius and the crowning of Empress Kintra. Year 48. Death of Empress Kintra and crowning of Emperor Uriel I. Year 64. Death of Emperor Uriel I and the crowning of Emperor Uriel II. Year 82. Death of Emperor Uriel II and crowning of Emperor Pelagius II. Year 99. Death of Pelagius. Pelagius II dies and crowning of Emperor Antiochus. 2nd century. Year 110. War of the Isle. Year 111. Knights of the Nine, founded by Sir Emil Lanus. Year 114. Reported death of Empress Kintra II. Year 119. Birth of Pelagius III. Year 121. Uriel III proclaimed emperor. Year 121. War of the Red Diamond. 123. Frostfall. The actual death of Empress Kintra II. In captivity. In secret. Year 127. The death of Emperor Uriel III and the crowning of Emperor Sepphoris I. The death of Potima, the Queen of Solitude. Death of Emperor Sepphoris I and the crowning of Emperor Magnus. Year 145. The death of Emperor Magnus and the crowning of Emperor Pelagius III. Year 153. Death of Emperor Pelagius III. The Catarrhia takes throne from husband Pelagius, becoming empress. 3rd century. Year 200. Death of Empress Catarrhia and crowning of Emperor Cassander. Year 202. Death of Emperor Cassander and crowning of Emperor Uriel IV. 247. Death of Emperor Uriel IV and crowning of Emperor Sepphoris II. Year 249. Invasion of the Empire by the Lich. Cameron Usurper. Year 253. Cameron Usurper controls the Dwynnin region with Nightmare Host. Year 267. Defeat of Cameron Usurper. Year 268. The crowning of Emperor Uriel V. Year 271 to 284. Various conquests of Emperor Uriel IV. Year 288. Invasion of Akavir by forces of Emperor Uriel Septim IV. Year 290. Death of Emperor Uriel V and the crowning of Emperor Uriel VI. 4th century. Uriel VI gained power as emperor. Year 320. Death of Uriel VI and crowning of Empress Marathia. Year 331. Publication of the second edition of A Pocket Guide to the Empire. Year 339. Assassination of Empress Marathia and crowning of Emperor Pelagius IV. Year 389. Jagar Tharn betrays Emperor Uriel Septim VII. Year 396. Regional wars throughout Tamriel. Year 396 as well. The Arnesian War. Year 399. Defeat of Jagar Tharn. Also the year 399. The founding of Orsinium. 5th century. Year 403. Assassination of Lysandus, the king of Daggerfall. Year 414. Vardenfell territory opened for settlement. Year 417. The warp in the west occurs. Year 421. Greywind founds the Crimson Scars. Year 427. Beginning of the Blight Curse in Vardenfell and arrival of the Nerevar. Also year 427. The Blood Moon prophecy comes to pass on the Isle of Solstheim. Year 432. Publication of the third edition of A Pocket Guide to the Empire. Year 433. Assassination of Uriel Septim VII. Year 433. The Oblivion Crisis. Year 433. The Knights of the Nine are reformed.